Sporting Journal Radio, presented by Onyx.
This is Sporting Journal Radio. I'm Brett Amundsen. Thank you for tuning in on the network by demand, sportingjournalradio.com, or by watching this on YouTube. Thank you very much. We're excited. This show's been going on for, our 11th year now, and we're going to celebrate another year's worth of shows at the Rainy River with the SJR 500. It's our second annual fishing tournament up on the Rainy River. All the details can be found at sportingjournalradio.com. And Dan and David, I learned a little something about holding a fishing. This is the first fishing tournament I've held here in the state of Minnesota, and you have to get a permit for it. If it's depending on what size the tournament is and what you're going to do and this and that, and it's pretty slick through the Fish Donkey app. It's all catch and release. They make it real easy, but you still need, depending on how you're holding the tournament, you still need to get a permit through the DNR, and they've got some different restrictions. If it's 50 or fewer boats, it's a $70 permit fee. For larger contests, more than 50 boats, it's a $225 fee. And for ice fishing contests, it's a $135 fee. And then there's some other restrictions and some other fees and rates, and you can find all that on the DNR website. So that got me thinking about how other states handle their tournament permit process. And then I got a couple of messages about what's going on in North Dakota, and there's a bill in the legislature right now. And to find out how it's been handled in the past, what potentially the future could look like, we're going to talk right now to Greg Power. He's the Fisheries Division Chief for the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. Greg, how you doing today?
Hey, Brett. Doing okay.
Thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it. You're probably busy over there right now, but I wanted to get just kind of a clarification on what's going on in North Dakota. What has it been like for somebody that's wanted to hold a tournament in North Dakota? What were the rules?
Yeah, well, North Dakota is maybe the exception to the rule throughout most of the country. For 40 years, our rules have been in place actually since 1983, 1984 time period, that any tournament in the state that needs to be permitted, which is most events, one of the requirements is a conservation fee. So 10% of the entry fees, whatever it is, whatever that total is, 10% of the entry fees needs to go back. Well, actually, it comes to the department, then 100% of that money goes back to the local entity that's managing all the boat. Most tournaments are off boat ramps. It needs to go right back to that boat ramp area for a boat dock, boat ramp, fish cleaning station, any maintenance, any youth fishing event, anything like that can work. So that's been in place, like I said, for 40 years. It's worked really well. We've permitted well over 3,000 tournaments with virtually no issues, except for out-of-state tournaments, especially some of the big dollar tick tournaments that want to come to North Dakota and say they can't because they can't afford it. They can't afford to pay the 10%. So because of that, some individuals have introduced legislation to the North Dakota legislature, and it actually passed the House already. So it's on the Senate side to get rid of that conservation fee and replace it with a simple application fee like you're talking is the case for Minnesota.
Okay, so that basically this would make those bigger tournaments a little bit more attractive. They'd be more interested in coming to North Dakota to hold these tournaments in.
That's exactly what they're saying, yes.
So with that, if it's just because honestly, that conservation fee, Dan and I were kind of talking about it before we got on the show here, that's kind of a great idea. I mean, what a great way to raise money for the resource and the facilities there that allow you to enjoy that resource. But I can see if you got a big dollar tournament, and you're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, I could see how that would be tough for a bigger tournament.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's been brought up. The only thing I can share is the history, as it's been virtually a non-issue. It's been the idea has been, again, it's been in place for 40 years, and we did a survey in 2021 of both tournament anglers, non-tournament anglers, and even the sponsors. And in all cases, there's support, to very, very strong support for the conservation fee. So, yeah, they've liked it because it is a reinvestment right back into that, in the perfect world, we get that money right back into that area where the boat ramp was. And it's also, kind of from our perspective in the big picture, there's always issues between or often are issues between tournaments and non-tournament anglers. It can be quite contentious at times. And I really, in our careers, for us here in the department, we've really noted a shift of more acceptance of fishing tournaments, where I think most North Dakota anglers like tournaments, don't have an issue with them. And we believe a big part of that is that conservation fee. So the department's been on record supporting the continuance of it. And, again, and a lot of people think it's just a money grab or something. We don't get a penny. We get nothing to administer it. It is just 100% pass-through monies.
So if it changes then to just this permit application fee, which could mean a lot less revenue for some of these local areas where these lakes and rivers are, what will that permit fee then go as a conservation fee, or will that money get split up or go somewhere else?
That's a good question. And the way it's structured right now, that's a big unknown. I mean, personally, right now it's maxed out at $2,500 would be the absolute maximum we could charge on an application fee. But I guess my perspective is we'd have to go through the administrative rule process again, regardless. The vast majority of the tournaments would be paying far, far less than that. So, I mean, it'd be $50, maybe up to a couple $100 at most, probably for most tournaments. So the money generated from that is, I hate saying this, but it's not going to add up to much at all. So it'd be very difficult to it'd be a money loser for sure for us to try to recirculate that money right back, for $50 tournament. Our cost would be far more than what it'd be worth doing. So I guess that's an issue that's up in the area where will that money go and how would it be used? But it's not going to be much.
So realistically, the local areas that would be hosting these tournaments are going to lose out on a lot of money to help maintain boat ramps, etc. And potentially you might bring in some of these bigger tournaments, but other than maybe some local dollars going into the local economies, there isn't much benefit for that then. Is that kind of what I'm getting?
That's a very good way of looking at it, Brett. And that's one of it's going to help out, obviously, and we're all for that, of course. Commerce, and tourism, we're totally supportive of that. The money helping out the Devil's Lakes of the world, but yes, the local entity, it's usually a partner managing, let's say, a county park board or a county water board, something like that are partners out there that are maintaining the infrastructure around boat ramps. And there'll be less money going to them for sure. Now, saying that, I also got to say, in its entirety, we're not talking millions of dollars here either. We're talking, most years it's probably somewhere in that neighborhood of $100,000 statewide. So it's not an extreme amount of money by any stretch.
So is there some sort of way to work a compromise in there where if you want to be, if you want to be attractive to these tournaments to bring money into the state, but not have them break the bank to get a tournament fee, say the $2,500 fee for them, but also allow, some of these monies from the money from these permits to go back into that conservation? How do we get that worked into the bill?
Right. That's another good question. And to be fair there too, since 2020, we had an administrative rule change in 2020, and that's kind of what's precipitated this issue today. And the department, as well as others, the CVBs and our tourism and others, we've been working on trying to find that compromise. What could work that would make everybody happy? And I don't know if that's possible. To make everybody happy, there's an element of people out there that are going to despise a fishing tournament and going to blame everything that goes wrong with a fishery on a tournament. And you're going to have that, and you're going to have others that think that it's their God-given right to have a tournament where they want to and when they want to. So it's, we're trying to work to the middle, if at all possible.
Well, as we know, especially in this day and age, it's impossible to make everybody happy, of course, especially when you're talking about politics and the government and things like that. So we won't go down that road necessarily. And to be fair, I'm very new to this topic. I don't know a lot of the history, a lot of the background on it. So I'm just looking at this. It's almost a first look at this issue right now, and just my first reactions and what, why is it this way? Why do people want it that way? There's probably some information I'm not privy to about it, but boy, I'll tell you what, in 40 years, if this has been going on, a conservation fee essentially, so that was it, right? So if somebody wanted to hold a tournament, they just had to give 10% of the tournament fees as a conservation fee, and that was the only thing they had to pay.
Right. There's no app. That was it, and it was capped for of those 40 years. There's a 20-year period that the maximum was capped off at 5,000. So you wouldn't have to pay more than 5,000 for all especially these out-of-state tournaments again.
Okay,
that exception was removed a couple years ago, and again, I think what's all the talk about today is.
That would make sense then, because all of a sudden it went from a $5,000 cap to potentially, tens of
$20,000-$30,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any idea why that changed?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I was probably a big part of it because of public input. I mean, there was an exception there, and it was, people don't like hearing this, but we heard from a lot of we had a lot of phone calls over a number of years about why was that fair? Why does a smaller tournament have to pay 10%, but the big boys who should have deeper pockets, why do they only have to pay 5,000? And in some cases, they may be paying 2-3%, 5%, not the full 10%. And that's a fair question. And that's the reason, in the end, that was the reason why. Treat all tournaments the same, no exceptions.
Well, and I guess that is a fair question, but at the same time, I think there is some commerce aspect to some of those big tournaments. I don't know the numbers, but I'd assume bringing in some big names and some big fishing tournaments where people are going to be staying in some of these smaller communities for a number of days versus, say a weekend tournament with a bunch of local anglers. I could see how there could be some economic benefit as well as, some conservation benefit with some of those tournament fees being in there too. But so it's passed the House and it's in the Senate right now?
Correct. Yeah, it'll have its hearing here in the next couple of weeks. And see where it goes, I guess.
Okay. And then if this passes, when would it take effect?
That's a good question, too. Typically, in North Dakota, they take effect August 1st. We've already permitted a lot of tournaments, well, probably most tournaments for the 2023 open water season for sure. So I'm not sure if it would take August 1st, or we'd have to, again, I believe we'd have to do some administrative rules. They may not take effect until January of next year, but, within the next 6 or so months, I guess.
All right. Is there anybody out there that has an opinion on this? Is there anything, I suppose it's beyond the public input time at this point?
Oh, no. I mean, I don't think so on either side. I mean, that's the whole idea. That's what makes America great, right? Of the legislative process, and people definitely have opportunity to input. And the hearing on the North Dakota legislative site, you can go online, and it's being used heavily. You could provide your own written email in your comments. You can show up and testify if time allows. But there is plenty of opportunity on either side of the matter to provide your input, your thoughts.
Okay. Well, let's just kind of break this down for just a little bit, Greg, if we can. When we're talking about money going back into conservation, say boat ramp maintenance, if this money ends up just becoming a permit fee and not a conservation fee, and say it goes to the legislature, goes to maybe the Game and Fish, and they get to decide what to do with it, I mean, what are the odds? So I was reading, let's back up just a second more. I was reading Doug Lear's article that he did with you, and he said that you started working, I'm sure you were happy that he put this in there, that you started working for Game and Fish when Jimmy Carter was president.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Needless to say, though, what he's trying to let everybody know is that you've been around for a long time. You've been around the department for a long time, and been a part of the fisheries in North Dakota, maybe longer than anybody else. And you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. You know what's happening. And I was reading that the first concrete boat ramp was in 1986 that the department funded, and now there's nearly 400 of them across the state. If this conservation fee, I don't know how much of this fee actually helps maintain those boat ramps, but obviously goes towards it. But what impact on the public accesses would taking away this conservation fee have? Not
a lot. Okay. I mean, to be totally transparent, we've never said it was. Again, it generates statewide maybe $100,000. We spend way more than that on boat development annually. It's the big picture, game and fish picture, it is not a money maker by any stretch, but it does help out some of these local entities with their maintenance and stuff of that nature. So again, I mean, this is just a real wag more than anything. But if it's $100,000 in conservation fees right now, the application fee is probably going to be closer to $20,000. Again, that's just not much at all. It costs internally in the department, it costs probably $40,000 a year just in our staff time administering tournaments. So application fee doesn't even come close to recovering our cost, let alone doing something conservation mind. But public shouldn't worry that we're not going to have boat ramps or boat docks or maintain our, get our fish cleaning stations pumped out or anything like that. That's gonna continue regardless.
So realistically, there isn't going to be any major impacts from this change other than the potential of having some bigger tournaments come in, which obviously some local anglers don't always like the bigger tournaments. You could see some negative public opinion on that right there, but you're not going to see a major impact on any sort of conservation efforts across the state.
No, other than, again, a few local entities that really like the money that they've had, because they're on popular fisheries. A little bit Devil's Lake, but in particular Lake Sakakawea, there's a number of concessionaires, the cooperators out there, and some of the counties actually there's a lot of tournaments that come off their boat ramps in those counties, and it generates a fair amount of money for them to at least keep up with grinders for the on the fish cleaning stations. A lot of this very boring things that add up. The O&M on the fish cleaning station or pump out and toilets it does add up. It's expensive. So especially for the local entity.
Would there be any sort of funding available for those entities to replace this, or would they have to find it on their own?
I'd suppose that's something that remains to be seen. I mean, it's something that we certainly would want to help them all out. We're all in the same boat here.
Sure. All right. Well, interesting topic. I appreciate your insight on that. And before we let you go, I just, I kind of want to ask you, what's the state of the fisheries in North Dakota right now?
It's funny you say that because I just finished up in North Dakota. We have a monthly magazine, North Dakota Outdoors, and every 4 to 5 years I do what I call as a report card, North Dakota Fishing Report Card, and it overall got an A-. We're in really good shape, and we try not to give any grade inflation here either. It's a serious A-. It's pretty darn good shape. We call the big three, Sakakawea, Devil's Lake, and the Missouri River Lake Oahe. That garners a lot of the interest, and 2 of those 3 are in great shape, Devil's Lake and Sac. Oahe, we have issues. We almost, believe it or not, have too many walleye. They're not growing. We have a forage issue there. And then we're getting through this winter. This is going to be a very tough winter where our numbers we got a lot of concerns. We have a record. The good news is we have a record number of fishing lakes, never more in North Dakota. The bad news is we're going to lose a fair number of them this winter, I'm afraid, due to winter kill and this prolonged snowpack on our lakes. But in the big picture, we probably have pushing 80 new walleye fisheries out in the prairie that are incredibly productive, and the locals really like them. When it comes to sharing, that's a different story sometimes, but it's been good.
Yeah, can I get the GPS coordinates for all those? By the way, so are those fisheries that you guys are stocking then?
They are. They are, yeah. They're truly a 6-foot duck wetland that are now 20 feet deep, 30, in some cases 30 feet or deeper, that are highly, highly productive with fathead minerals and all the invertebrates. And but the walleye's natural reproduction is missing. So we do have to stock them annually for the most part.
All right. Well, you can just email me those coordinates to those places. That would be great.
I'm on it.
No, that's great. I lived in North Dakota for a number of years. I miss the hunting and fishing opportunities that are over there. I really enjoyed my time in that state, and sounds like things are great. We probably should make a trip. Maybe we'll plan a trip.
Okay.
And I don't know, maybe chase some snow geese and maybe do a little bit of
spring cast and blast.
Yeah, I like it. Very good. Well, Greg Power, I appreciate the time today, and thanks for the update on what's going on with tournament permit fees and regulations in North Dakota. Thanks for being on the show.
You bet. All right. Have a good day.
Hear more at sportingjournalradio.com or wherever you get podcasts. Ice fishing season is here. This winter, plan a trip to Devils Lake, North Dakota. Not only will you have the chance to catch their legendary perch, but this year, Haybale Heights has been catching big walleye after big walleye. And they're doing it from a mobile, comfortable snow bear. No matter how cold it is outside, you're warm and toasty on the inside. Learn more and book a trip today at haybaleheights.com. That's haybaleheights.com.